Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Yolanda Melville. I serve as Legal Redress Chair of the Atlantic City branch of the NAACP. I also serve as an attorney here in Atlantic City for Cooper Levinson. I am honored tonight to serve as your moderator for the Republican set of the congressional debates. And first, as Mr. Goodman explained, we will start off with opening statements from each candidate. So please, Mr. Grossman, you can begin.
All right, I'm Seth Grossman. Some of you may say, well, Seth who? I had that feeling when I checked in to do a case in City Hall, and they were taking my name, and they said, what's your name? And I signed in. She says, oh, Seth Grossman. Didn't you used to be somebody? And that really made me feel good and comfortable. But I was the boy wonder who came back from college, was going to turn Atlantic City upside down and straighten it out. I won to be city council back in 1986. I was the guy who upset the incumbent freeholder by one vote in a primary in 1988. Since then, I raised a family, had a law practice for about 41 years. I'm in Summers Point now. I founded a group called libertyandprosperity.com. And the reason I did that was, I remember on the boardwalk, they used to have these Pennsylvania Dutch plaques with these slogans on them. And one of them said, too soon old, too late smart. And I wish I knew then what I know now about what's happening to this country. But now that I have this knowledge, I'm running for Congress. A couple people say, what are my views on term limits? And I can tell you I'm 69 years old, so I'm not going to be in Congress for more than like 2 or 4 years. But what am I running for? I'm with the MAGA agenda, Make America Great Again, of Donald Trump. And the key elements of that campaign are, number 1, enforce immigration laws. Number 2, reduce immigration levels to sustainable levels. The ones we had before Ted Kennedy messed everything up in 1965 and just brought far more immigrants to this country than we ever had, even though we had a system that was working. To repeal the expensive Obamacare insurance mandates that make insurance and medical care so expensive that most people can't afford it without massive government help. To protect Second Amendment rights, to have people understand that the right and duty to protect yourself and your family is something that's a basic, natural human right, not something that you get from the government. I'd like to also use the federal government to make sure our schools again teach what made America great again, instead of teaching our kids that they live in some awful country that's responsible for every problem in the world. I want to support President Trump and his Make America Great Again agenda, and to stop fake obstruction and fake impeachment charges. Now, of course, we have this gap between us, which hopefully I'll explain as we go. The one thing is, I do have a commitment to be in Manahawkin at 7:30, so if I have to leave at 6:55, that explains it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Turkavich. I live in Brigantine, New Jersey. A little bit about me. I am retired from the FBI. I was with the FBI for 32 years, almost 33 years. I was a supervisory special agent up in the New York City field office of public corruption and government fraud. After that, after 9/11, I supervised one of the Office of Intelligence squads in support of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Retired from the FBI, I went with J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. I started there as a vice president in their fraud department. I worked with all the business lines, and my job at Chase was to prevent bank customers from being ripped off in these various schemes and scams that you see today. I am retired. My wife and I, we do volunteer work. As a matter of fact, today, just before getting here, we spent 8 hours in court. We're both what you call court-appointed special advocates for children in foster care, and we just had an 8-hour court meeting today that we completed. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that I am the best candidate for this job simply because I have by far the most experience. I have extreme knowledgeable in federal issues as well as local issues and have ideas for their solution. And I also think that in view of my experience with the FBI, I have the proper temperament that one needs in Congress because, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, Congress today is extremely polarized along party lines. And we need to be coming together instead of ripping ourselves apart. And I think I'm the person to do that. Also, on the issues, I'm very supportive of our president when I think our president is advancing the agenda of our country, our constituents, and our children. But I'm not a bobbing head. And we have 3 branches of government, not 1. So if I have a disagreement, I'm going to voice that disagreement. But again, it's with the notion of bringing the country together rather than tearing the country apart. And that's what we need in the legislature. That's what we need down there right now. Thank you.
So first of all, I would just like to say sorry for entering late. I left another event, and you always get traffic here, and so I appreciate the fact that I have an opportunity to meet with you all today. My name is Hirsch Singh. I was born just a couple blocks away at the Atlantic City Medical Center in 1985, and I would say that my entire life I've been a South Jersey boy. I was in 3rd grade, I was in Galloway Township until 3rd grade, moved over to Egg Harbor Township, where I went all the way through to high school. I was the type of student that was in every activity. I played football, tennis, I was on the diving team, I was on the physics league, the chemistry league, trimathlon. I sang in the choir for over 13 years. I was even lead in the school musical, Jesus Christ Superstar. So I was the type of student that when he went home, all he had were books and video games. So I got my engagement and social activity in public school, a strong public school. Egg Harbor Township is an example of a great public school program. I would say I'm an example of the American dream because my parents came here. I'm a first generation. Started from the bottom. My parents actually, before I was born, lived over in Trenton. They gave me this opportunity by working very, very hard. They started a business before I was born, and it did not succeed. They started a second business, working very, very hard. And I would say today, I have now the opportunity to stand in front of you as the leading Republican candidate for South Jersey. After I graduated from Egg Harbor Township, I went to NJIT, and I got my degree in engineering. Started out electrical engineering, changed over to biomedical engineering, ended up with a concentration in tissue engineering and material science. Afterwards, I had the opportunity to decide, did I want to go to Silicon Valley? Did I want to do research and development over in Boston? But instead of either of those options, I did what any person who loves their family and sees their family work very, very hard would do. I actually came back and joined my father's company. You see, 23 years ago, in our garage in Egg Harbor Township, my father started a company focused on aviation safety and security. After graduating, he had around 80 to 100 people in the company, and it was, I would say, it's a challenge. If you start from nothing, you get to about 80 people. So I joined it, and I helped grow it. In the areas today, we support missile defense, satellite navigation, electronic warfare. We work with intelligence communities, because there's 16, right? The work that we've been doing is right there with NASA, with FAA.
10 seconds.
And I would say that what I know firsthand is what's good and bad in DC and what needs to be fixed. I'm here to fight for you, no political boss. Thank you very much.
I apologize. There's 2 minutes in response to the questions from the audience. Ms. Montville will read it. And also, I have to apologize. Mr. K-Side reminded me on the TV, triax57.com. You can be in South Africa and get it. So the point is, it's worldwide. So I apologize to him for that. Sorry about that.
No problem. This first question is for all candidates. What is your position on gun control? Candidate 1, Mr. Grossman.
Well, I already said that I believe that the right to bear arms is a fundamental right that's not just guaranteed by the Constitution. The Constitution recognizes the right we have. When you look at all the mass shootings, you see that the failures that caused those tragic deaths were caused by nothing that had to do with ordinary law-abiding people who had guns. You saw people with psychiatric problems whose problems were well known to their fellow students, their teachers, their counselors. But because of these crazy confidentiality laws, where people were more afraid of being sued than protecting the lives of their students, things were not reported. We saw that there was a policy in place at Parkland that the statistics would look bad if they had criminal violations or incidents at the school. So instead of calling criminal behavior, it was whitewashed, erased from the record. And a monster was allowed to continue in a school and plot and plan and get a gun legally. So we've got to enforce the laws we already have. We have a bunch of other problems, which I could go into far more than 2 minutes, about schools that are not inspiring people to create and invent and be independent. We have schools teaching students to conform, to take courses that make no sense, to leave school with no marketable skills, no hope for the future. So people are turning to drugs. We have teachers and counselors controlling kids with medication to make them controllable, as opposed to finding the underlying problems. And I think that not only is demanding new laws for gun control bad, because it's not going to work, it's going to take the focus off the real problems.
Mr. Cabbage.
Yes. My views on the Second Amendment. I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, the Constitution. As a matter of fact, when I was an FBI agent, I took an oath, and that oath was to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and that included all the amendments to the Constitution. But with that said, I am very concerned about the shootings that are occurring in our schools. There are certain common sense measures that Congress is in a position to take, but has, as of this moment, not yet taken. One thing, ladies and gentlemen, is called the National Instant Background Check System. The acronym is NICS. And there is a bill that is present in the U.S. Senate. There is a companion bill that is in the United States House of Representatives. And essentially, that will step up enforcement for the various agencies at the state and federal level to improve their reporting to this system that instantaneously can tell you whether or not a person is entitled to purchase a gun. So that's a common sense measure that we can take right now. Another common sense measure is the internet sales of guns and the online sales of guns and at gun shows. They should be subject, in my opinion, to the same background check that is a bill that's pending in the House and the Senate. These are common sense measures. It doesn't mitigate anyone's Second Amendment rights, but yet it improves the likelihood of better enforcement and ensuring that the people that shouldn't have guns don't get access to guns. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Yolanda. And I think the words "shall not be infringed" are pretty clear. It's fundamental, it's a right. I think the real problem, though, is that when you have gun buyback programs, they only focus on minority communities. I think it's a shame that for some odd reason they look at minority communities and say, you don't need to defend yourself, but in the suburbs they never do it. I think it's really unfortunate that, every person, regardless of what your ethnic background is not protected with the way these laws are coming, and they're encroaching further, okay? Every single person has the right to defend themselves, and honestly, in the view of government, it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is. We're all Americans here. We should all be able to be protected, and that is something that we used to have. They've taken it away, and we need it again. So I am a firm supporter of the Second Amendment, but I really think we need to integrate that into our local communities so that people can feel safe in their homes, and we're not going to stand for criminals that, skirt the law, because they don't care what the law is. They'll skirt the law, and then they try and take advantage of good, hardworking people that want to take care of their families and want to take care of their communities. So I firmly support it, and I support every minority community.
Okay, on this set of questions, we'll actually start with you, Mr. Singh, and move into Ms. Turkovich and then to Mr. Grossman. Next question is, regarding education, what would you do to equalize funding to districts like Pleasantville and Atlantic City?
Well, school funding, for the most part, is actually following the funding formula in the State House. So as a congressional candidate, we really can't have more control than having a very strong opinion, because we're not voting members. Essentially, though, this district has 92 municipalities, so if you bring people together, you can do a lot politically. Power does not come from just your ability to vote, it comes from the people. Now, I ran for governor last year, and I think the solution we had was very, very good, and I still think we need to push it today. And it was the fair funding formula. Essentially, there's more than enough money in Trenton to make sure that every one of our students has the opportunity to get the education they need. But it shouldn't be politicians that decide where that money goes, because that's when things, end up going down dirty channels. I think that if you take the total amount of budget that's allocated to school funding in this state, and you divide it by every student, K through 12, you take that money and you give it to the teachers and the students so it can go wherever they go. So you, as an individual, have a choice to decide, do you want to send your kids to a private school, to a parochial school, to any type of school. You allow for school choice to make sure your children, the next generation, gets the best opportunity. Because why are we engaged in politics if not to make sure that the life you live is good, but the life that your children live is better? That's the American dream. That's what we're here to do. So we need a fair funding formula. We need money to follow the student. Let the children be taken care of by having parents that decide who educates their kids, whether it be a religious school, a parochial school, or otherwise. If we don't take care and invest in our children, there's no future for us. Thank you.
On the question of funding, there's a lot of regulation that comes from Washington, and I think that those regulations, the Department of Education, a lot of those decisions need to be made at the local level. When you get to the local level and you're talking about funding, there's only so many dollars. I believe that we need to take a holistic look at our educational system. We need to see where in the state of New Jersey are we lagging? Where are our children lagging? And to get the most efficient use out of the education dollars, I believe that we should apportion our educational funding in the areas that have a demonstrated need to improve. So my answer very simply is, you have a limited number of funds. You need to identify where is the need, where are the gaps, the educational gaps, where are the children struggling? And what you then need to do is provide funding, concentrate on the funding for those particular areas. It's a basic, simple solution to funding education. Where's the need? Let's meet the need. Thank you.
I'm a product of the Atlantic City Public Schools. I went to Richmond Avenue School. We had 6th grade. You had 6 teachers. Actually, you had 7 teachers. 6 grades, 1 teacher for each grade. You had 1 for the special education. You had a principal, a secretary, and a janitor. That was it. You go to any school today and see how many people you need there. I went to Central Junior High, went to Atlantic City High School. At that time, property taxes in New Jersey were affordable. Even poor families didn't need low-income housing because there were plenty of private housing available. We had no income tax. We had no state sales tax. And yet, when I went to Duke University, my Atlantic City public school education put me equal, if not better, than all the fancy preppy boys from New England, those fancy prep schools. So what happened? What made public education so darn expensive? And probably if you talk to anyone in education, they'll tell you a big problem was created by Congress, and Congress could fix it. And that's called the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. Used to be, if a kid didn't do well, if he got a B instead of an A, they'd say, work harder, it's your fault, or maybe you don't have the talent, whatever it was. The responsibility was on the kid and the parents. What does that Disabilities Act say? Oh, if you don't get a good grade, it's not your fault. School's fault. We don't have the proper individual education plan to fix it. And now we end up having to give disclaimer or notices telling parents to get lawyers so they could hire experts that are paid for by the school, and we're spending $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 a year to educate one kid. It's insane, and it comes from Congress. And if I get elected to Congress, I will deal with that issue. It's painful, it's embarrassing, but we've got to talk about things because it's killing the country.
We're starting with you again, Mr. Grossman. Would you replace the Affordable Care Act? If so, what type of legislation would you support?
All right, the problem with health insurance, and I know because I'm a product of the healthcare system. My dad was a dentist, Eli Grossman, and he charged $2 for filling right up to the 1970s. And what happened was people paid out of their pocket for small things. You had major medical for the big things, the serious injury. And when you paid for things out of your own pocket, you were careful at what you spent. When you have government health care, government insurance, there's massive waste. I just got some drug called naproxen, I think it's aspirin or something for when I had the flu. It was $2.67 that got paid for by Medicare. And I got something in the mail from in 11 languages, 14 pages to explain the benefits. I mean, that is what's messing things up. What's also messing things up is people are gaming the system, the doctors game it. It's always easy to say, spare no expense when someone else is paying for it. I would return the whole concept of healthcare to the idea that if it's a catastrophic injury, you pay for it, that the insurance pays for it, but if it's a sore throat or something, you pay for it, and you'll be amazed how the cost will come down.
On the Affordable Care Act needs revision. I think we're beyond repeal, but it needs to be revised. Now, why do I say this? I say this because last year, Congress did away with the mandate, which means you are no longer penalized if you do not have insurance coverage. So what has that done? Well, what it has resulted in is a lot of younger people dropping out of health insurance coverage. So what's been the result of that? Well, you have now a smaller insurance pool, a smaller group of people that are getting insurance. Now, because Congress did not act on the balance of Obamacare, most of the remaining portions of Obamacare for now are left intact. What's going to happen? Your rates are going to go up. So that's what we have to deal with. We have to do two things, in my opinion, to improve our healthcare system. One, we have to incentivize our young children to get back in the health insurance pool. And two, we have to adopt what I call cost containment measures to bring down the health insurance. And three, we have to make the healthcare regulations more adaptable to individuals. In other words, If you don't want a certain type of coverage, you shouldn't have to have that type of coverage. That should be your decision, not the government's decision. And with respect to cost containment, there are a number of ways that Congress, the Congressional Budget Office says that we can reduce our healthcare spending. They come out every year with an annual report of various ways to reduce that spending. Thank you.
I'm more aligned with the first answer. I think that anything you put government in the middle of, the price just goes out of control. And we've seen that it doesn't matter what industry it's in. If we really care about the people, we want to make all good healthcare options available. You should not have to be in a government program to get good care. I really think that I have a decent, maybe not expert understanding of what it is like on the doctor's side. Because a doctor, remember, has to go through 30 years of education before they even have an opportunity to serve the people. And if they want to do good work, they want to take care of you, if you know them, they don't have the ability to do so when you have large governmental programs that are constantly telling you what government hurdle, when you can, when you cannot do something. And they have processes. They can say, oh, well, this new drug is available today, but it costs more money because it's newer. We don't want you to take the new expensive drug today. We're going to make you go on a step program. So we're going to make you go through 3 different types of drugs before you get to something that'll solve your problem. And you, as the consumer, have to take all the side effects. It's wrong, it's unfortunate, and this is what happens when you make a one-size-fits-all. I think when you allow there to be competition across state lines, which will happen after this Affordable Care Act is repealed, we'll be able to solve a lot of these problems. This is a very big problem because costs are going up everywhere, but who's getting paid more? So I think that it needs to be addressed. I want to solve the problem. I want to be a part of the solution. I have a unique understanding because half my family dedicated 30 years plus of their lives to becoming doctors, surgeons, and beyond. But yeah, we must fix this, and I think it starts with repealing the Affordable Care Act. That name sounds wonderful, but it's a lie.
We'll actually begin with you again, Mr. Singh.
Mr. Lena loves me.
Please explain your position on how increasing debt affects government spending in other programs.
So I'm actually going to have to, I guess the right way to approach this is government debt is the silent killer. It is what put the USSR into history, okay? That is actually the single biggest threat to our union, to our country today. And that's why, even since Bill Clinton was running for office, you know, what do they say? It's the economy, stupid, right? But now everyone wants a cut of the pie that's happening in DC, and the politicians that want to get reelected year after year after year, they need to make sure that they're delivering something to their constituents. And no one wants to take the hard truth that they can't to reduce where the money is being spent. You can't be taking loans from other countries to pay for services internally, but you can't even get to that. You know, if you're stuck in this system where everyone is on the take. So we really need to cut our spending, and the debt will be the end of this country. It's right now at a unique opportunity where we could potentially stop the downfall, but look at the rate of expansion. When Bill Clinton was president, we had a surplus. A surplus. And right now, the trillions of dollars, whose life is better today? Standard of living has somehow gone down. So what are we spending the money on? Why are we at war somewhere else, sending our young children, if we can't even take care of our home? They come back and it's like worse than it was when they left. It's unacceptable, it's wrong, it's unaffordable, and it's the people in DC, it's this swamp, okay? We gotta root it out. I'm a man of the people, and we gotta end it. And that's why I'm here, but I agree, it's a big problem.
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. What is your platform with regard to how increasing debt affects government spending in other programs?
We're at $21 trillion right now, just about $21 trillion. I ran as an independent in 2012. The debt at that time was $15.7 trillion. I ran as a Republican in 2014. The debt was 17.3 trillion. Right now we're at 21 trillion. It's going to go up $1 trillion this year. It's probably going to go up $1 trillion plus next year. What does it do? When you keep rising the debt, there's two things you have to remember. We're paying interest on that debt, number one. And it's okay, well, it's not okay, but it's not too bad if the Americans are holding that debt. The problem is Japan, China, Great Britain, they're all major holders of our debt. So what is happening? Every year we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to China, to Japan, to Britain. Ladies and gentlemen, that is like leaving your window open in the wintertime. It's money out the window. That is money that we cannot spend at home. And what that does, when that money's going out the window, we cannot use that money for healthcare programs, for the various other programs, infrastructure programs that we have here in the United States. So my solution to this, ladies and gentlemen, is it's based on the notion that Congress has no self-control. And the way they're going to get self-control is if there is a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution, and that's precisely what we need. That's precisely what I would endorse. And that's the way we will stop this debt. Thank you.
Well, those of us in New Jersey know that a constitutional amendment to avoid debt doesn't mean very much because we have a balanced budget constitution here in New Jersey, don't we? Yet the pension funds are $100 billion in debt. The rest of the state's about $300 billion in debt. You know, with my group, libertyandprosperity.com, we often say, what happens to America happens to Atlantic City first. And you see the effect of debt here. When the economy collapsed in 2008, and even the casinos couldn't pay the money, did we cut spending and salaries, make those hard choices? No. For 7 years, Atlantic City spent $80 million more than it took in. Now this little town of 42,000 people has a $400 million debt that can never be repaid. And of course, we got taken over by the state because they were going to take care of the debt. But remember Christie, he was running for president. He didn't want to be embarrassed by layoffs and stuff in Atlantic City, so we got that $400 million debt for this small town. And you see the damage. The only way I could describe Atlantic City government today is a sharecropper government, right? Because no matter what we do, it's all dependent on getting the state to pay the debt. If they don't pay the debt, we get taxed out of our homes. And that's what's happening to the entire country. So we've got to say, government is very limited. It has to protect our safety. We have a constitution that actually says what the government can pay for, what it can't pay for. We've got to take that seriously. And we actually have to think of some hard terms of what we're going to do. We might actually have the country go bankrupt, or Atlantic City, because there's physically, it's so unfair to say our children have to pay that. And I want to apologize to the host and everybody else. I do have a commitment in Manahawkin, and I don't want to end up like John Corzine trying to go 90 miles up the Parkway, so please forgive me as I head to that next event. Thank you very much. That's grossmanforcongress.com.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. Okay, we'll finish up with the last two candidates. The question would be for Mr. Turkovich, since you're next in line. The question is, what is your position on funding Planned Parenthood?
I am against funding Planned Parenthood. I believe that I am a person that believes the most precious gift that we have is life. The most precious. I know Planned Parenthood does a lot of good things, but they also have involved in abortions and counseling and the like. So I am 100% opposed to funding for Planned Parenthood.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is very simple. Okay, if you're not pro-life, you don't understand the issue. Funding of Planned Parenthood is government money used, in some cases, in my opinion, against minority populations to keep them from growing. They want to control the cities, and this is a very terrible thing, okay? Why are we saying that China is so strong in the world? Why are they saying India is so strong? It's because of their population. What do they do with Planned Parenthood? They try to limit the number of kids you have. I'm sorry, this is unacceptable. I believe in actually the pain-capable bipartisan legislation which gives up to 20 weeks. After 20 weeks, abortion is illegal. And I firmly stand by that. I love babies. I want lots more. That's what makes the next generation there, and that's what keeps and takes care of us in our old age. Thank you.
I believe this may be the last question. If elected, what is the #1 issue that you would advocate on behalf of Atlantic City and Washington? Mr. Singh.
For too long, Atlantic City has been taken advantage of by forces outside of Atlantic City. For so many years, they've been trying to encroach more and more and more. This year, on the Republican ticket, you have the opportunity to be free of that. I am beholden to no boss, and what I would be looking toward is really making Atlantic City the capital of South Jersey. Because South Jersey is strong, South Jersey is beautiful, and I think that if we decide to work together, we can make not only Atlantic City earn the title of being the capital of South Jersey, but we can remake it into America's playground. I love this city. I'm selfishly interested in doing what's best for it, and I'm looking for your support and your help, that even though we may not agree on all the issues, no one will fight harder for South Jersey and Atlantic City than I will. And what I would want is for Washington, D.C. money and investment to come in here and to give us better opportunities and better jobs to make sure we can bring businesses and technology from around the country to come here. You know, if Oceanfront wasn't turning into a casino, I really wanted to sell that to Google, you know? I want a Hyperloop from Atlantic City to New York City, the way they're doing Hyperloop from New York to D.C. Have people that live over there live here instead, work there. There's a lot of fun things we can do with technology right now. Let's find out how we can make this city even better. It's led in energy, it's led in some planning, but we gotta make more opportunities, and that's only gonna come with some capital investment where people are not trying to leech and take Atlantic City's profits and spread it elsewhere, but invest in here and make our home better.
The unemployment rate in Atlantic City is twice the national average, maybe even a little more than that. In the other cities in Frank's district, Frank LoBionda's district, it's either twice or 3 times the national average. You'll hear candidates talk about jobs. Everybody's going to bring jobs. Folks, there's another issue here. It's an underlying issue. Corporations, when they decide where they're going to locate a factory or hire people, they make that decision based on what some people would refer to as a climate survey. In other words, they'll say, what's the taxes look like? What's the education look like? What's the infrastructure like? What's the transportation like? And they take all this information and they make a decision. And another one is education, and that's the most important thing that I think we need here in Atlantic County right now. More specifically, counselors. Counselors that will guide our children, not when they're in high school, but when they're in their intermediate school, guiding them on their academic development. And then, once they get to high school, those counselors, those highly trained and highly motivated counselors, hopefully will teach our children or guide them on whether a college path or a VOTEC path is best for them. And that is the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen. We got to get out of this morass that we're in, okay? We have to educate our children. Now, for those people that are already out of the workforce without jobs, the federal government has a multitude of agencies that have a multitude of training programs. We need to coalesce, combine those programs. And the other thing is, you need to train to the need. And that's the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is education. That's what's going to bring Atlantic City out of the morass.
Okay, so we will begin with the final summation. So Mr. Turkovich, could you begin?
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to listen to my speech tonight. Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said. Look, I'm 63 years old. This is probably my last run around the block. If we don't make it this time, I'm just going to sit on the beach in Brigantine with my wife and be happy and continue volunteering with CASA and the other volunteer activities that I'm involved with. But I got to tell you this. I love my country. I love my country with all my heart. And I see that we're hurting right now. And I see that Frank Lobiondo did a really darn good job, in my opinion, to stand up for this district, whether it was the jobs down at Cape May, whether it was the offshore drilling, his being against that. I liked what Frank did, and I'd like to continue doing that. I think I'm the most experienced candidate. I think I'm the most mature candidate. I think I have a tremendous command of what our issues are. And most importantly, I think that I have the right temperament to serve as your legislator in Washington. Because you could be the smartest, you could be the most knowledgeable. You cannot get along with your Democrat and your Republican friends. You're not going to get anything done. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. And TurkavichForCongress.com. And thanks to some tremendous people, I have a Facebook account. The dinosaur that I am, I have a Facebook account. So check it out, Turkavich for Congress. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
So I want to thank you all for having this candidates night. I know there's going to be another one in the general, but I really appreciate the opportunity to get everyone here together. Because you have to understand that I'm not here for me. We don't have an advocate for all the communities of South Jersey. I am putting myself out there saying, tell me your problems, give me your issues, and I've become a better candidate for it. I've been going across this entire district, trying to understand more and better, and that is why I would say we're the leader in the Republican side. This is hard work. I'm not getting any boss support. I have no establishment behind me. This is the people that I'm going from one organization to the next, working day and night with a great team to make sure that we have someone who is beholden to you, the people. Now I'm going to give my very best shot to make sure that independent of party, anyone who has a rational idea, who really wants to solve our problems down here in South Jersey is on board with me. I don't care what party you're from, and I don't care if we have certain areas that we disagree. We all agree that this place is beautiful, this place can be great, and I want to work with you to make it possible. My name is Hirsch Singh. I'm born and raised down here. I'm one of you. I need to know what the issues are to make sure I can represent you well. Let's not let a politician who's bought and paid for by the political bosses of this state take over our home. I'm the voice of the people. Please help me become a better voice. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
I want to thank all the candidates, Mr. Singh, Mr. Turkovich. Thank you for coming. First of all, I think it's a brave move that you came into the community. And I'm fortunate that you took that chance, because we always get somehow missed when serious candidates come for this serious office that makes a major effect. So I do appreciate you. I do appreciate the audience in terms of their how they acted. We're going to take a 5-minute break so that the Democratic candidates can come up and we can get started. But thank you once again. Don't anybody leave. Just take a little break. Thanks again. The rules of the game of tonight's debate are still the same. Michael is 2 minutes. Opening statement, 3 minutes. 3 minutes opening statement. Then questions from the audience. Questions from the audience. If you have a question and haven't put it on an index card, someone will come by, give you an index card to write it out. We need no. Opposite the word none. No. Outbursts from the audience. Okay? So the debates tonight, first of all, we have to thank all the candidates for coming, both Republican and Democrat. The most important part of this is not just here. You are not the only ones hearing this. We have for TV land and internet land, Triax 57. That if you put in triax57.com, you can see it anywhere you are. Wherever you are, excuse me. On the radio land, we have the gospel station. We're 88.7 AM and 100.3 FM. The FM station can be heard in Atlantic City, Pleasantville, and parts of EHT. The AM station is specific to Atlantic City. So you are our studio audience, and we appreciate that. We're going to start off, we're very transparent, as the NAACP is a non-partisan organization. Okay? I put in this bag, since we didn't have no one with a hat, 3 numbers. Yes, hold on. Yes, sir. And gentlemen don't mind when we go first? Absolutely. Okay.
Go, I want to get home.
All right. So, the order in which the opening statement of 3 minutes will be Mr. Cunningham, 1, Ms. Youngblood, 2, Mr. Van Drew, 3. When we get to our questions, it will start in order, and then it will be mixed up. So Yolanda Montville is our moderator once again. And by the way, let's give her a great hand, because she did a great job, that person. So we're going to start. Ms. Montville will get it. Oh yes, please. When you hear that bell, I should be facing the candidates. You have 10 seconds in which to sum things up. If you hear it real heavy, that means stop. If we don't stop you, then I ask Mr. Kason to cut the mic. So, again, 3 minutes to start, questions, and then we'll have our summation. All right.
Good evening, everyone, again. For those who just joined us, my name is Yolanda Melville. I am an attorney with Cooper Levinson here in Atlantic City, and I also serve as the NAACP Atlantic City Branch's Legal Redress Chair. I am privileged tonight to be here for the second round of the Democratic candidates for Congress, and the order, as Mr. Goodman has stated, we'll start with Mr. Cunningham, next we'll go with Ms. Youngblood, and finalize with Mr. Van Drew. For the next question after that, we'll start with the third candidate and move backwards, and the questions will be for 2 minutes. So your intro and summations are 3 minutes, and questions are 2 minutes. First, we'll start with Mr. Cunningham.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is William.
Good evening again. My name is William Cunningham, and as you can see, I'm the youngest candidate in this primary. It just so happens that the youngest candidate is the one with the most federal experience. So I have it. Congress is in desperate need of new perspectives and a new voice for change. There are 435 members in the House of Representatives. The person that represents our district will be one of 435. Let's be clear about what that means. It means our next representative is going to be a freshman congressperson with no seniority. Folks, trend is not DC. We need a congressperson prepared to roll their sleeves up to creatively get results. Exactly what I have been doing during my time on Capitol Hill. As a policy advisor for Senator Cory Booker and as a government investigator in the House of Representatives for Congressman Elijah Cummings.
All right.
Unlike my opponents, there is no learning curve with me as your representative. I have the federal experience needed to get results for the hardworking families in South Jersey on day one. As Congressman, your concerns will be heard by someone that truly understand your challenges and your hardships because I have personally experienced them myself. You know, I was born in Vineland in Cumberland County, the poorest county in the state, to a teenage mother. Growing up, my mother and her coworkers, who were unfairly never allowed to unionize, barely made above minimum wage. They split the van lease and gas to their factory job every day. And watching them, I learned you always look out for the common good. When sickness in our house led to missed paychecks, which led to eviction and homelessness, folks of all races and backgrounds in South Jersey shared my true democratic values to always look out for the common good. Those values propelled me out of poverty, into the Ivy League, and a law degree. Now, I've spent my entire life paying that generosity forward. I paid it forward as an educator for Teach for America, an organization that closes the achievement gap in underserved schools. I paid it forward as an investigator in the House of Representatives Oversight Committee, calling out big pharmaceutical companies and their unfair pricing on products like the EpiPen and seniors' medication. My desire to pay it forward is the reason I'm running to be your congressman. In Trenton, Jeff Van Drew wore the label Christi-Crat with pride. He proved to us that he won't stand with Democrats on basic common sense policies like pension reform and environmental protection and equality and minimum wage and gun safety, and the list goes on and on. This district deserves so much better. I've already gone from homeless to the House, and I'm here to tell you that the same position, passion, and drive I use to get results in my life, I will use to get results for you and your family and your children's. And this race is not about shaking hands for me, it's about shaking tables. And I want to be your congressman to get results. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the Atlantic City branch of the NAACP for hosting this event and for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself to the people of Atlantic City. I want you to know I am the best kept secret in this race. My name is Tansy Youngblood, and I am running for Congress, and I would like you to support and help me in investing in our community. I am a retired teacher, and I have been a stable member of this community for nearly 2 decades. My late husband and I raised 2 amazing sons. Now, usually I don't like to talk a whole lot about myself, but someone said you're much too humble. Tell the story, so I'm going to tell the story. I'm a Blue Star mom, and my oldest son is a naval officer. He is currently deployed in the Persian Gulf as an information warfare specialist. He has a degree in accounting from Howard University and a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania. My youngest son is a chemist and a Princeton University Woodrow Wilson Fellow. Two master's degrees and 5 teaching certifications, 2 of which are in educational administration and leadership. I taught social studies, American history, government, politics, and civics, and I am also a reading specialist who is passionate about literacy development. I have been a teacher, a mentor, and an advocate for our nation's most vulnerable and at-risk children and families for 35 years. For 35 years, I am committed to family, hard work, and public service. Why am I running? I am running because I am fed up. I am fed up with career politicians who cannot be trusted. I am running to be the voice of the people. I am running because I am tired of watching people in our community struggling to survive. I am running because nearly 1/4 of our nation's children are living in poverty. I am running because our counties right down here in South Jersey are the poorest in the state. I am running because I can no longer accept the status quo. I am running because we deserve better and our children deserve a better future. That is why I'm running. As a Congresswoman, I will work to secure the funding and resources necessary so that our community can begin the work of rebuilding itself. I will work tirelessly to maintain and strengthen safety net programs such Security and Medicare, and to enhance educational opportunities at all levels. Since we're ending, I better end it real fast, okay? I was the first one in this race. I have worked harder and longer than any man in this race, and I got in this race to lead the resistance against the 23-year Republican incumbent. I represent the backbone of the Democratic Party, and I am the strongest, most qualified, most electable candidate. Thank you.
Specific to you, Ms. Youngblood, since you did it. Time is important. We have a program and we follow a format. Okay? So, I don't want to just take the mic from you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is good to be with all of you. I want to thank the NAACP for doing this. It's so important to make sure that we really do have an exchange of ideas. And I do have to admit, I'm always learning. And I've been a state senator, a state assemblyman, a mayor, a councilman, a freeholder, but you're always learning. And what I've learned so much is that we need advocacy. We need somebody to stand up and fight and represent and work for the district and to work for Atlantic City specifically, because we can do better. You know, when casinos came years ago, everybody thought it was going to be the total answer. They were going to come, change the city, and everything would be good. But what happened is the casinos came, but much of the city was forgotten about. Many of the local businesses closed. Home ownership went down. Those are things that we need to change. Those are things in which we can do better. And I do know how to change things because I have been involved. So when 1,500 people were going to lose their job at the Violent Developmental Center, I worked my back off to make sure that they kept their jobs. When people were dying because of traffic situations and traffic lights on the parkway, I worked so hard to make sure that they went down so again, people would be able to drive and be safe. I'm also a down-to-earth, regular guy. I'm a politician, they say that, but the truth is I hope to be an elected leader. I am now. So when I talk to people, I look them in the eye. When I talk to people, you know, somebody came up to me the other day and they said, you know, when you became freeholder, I wanted to call you freeholder, you made me call you Jeff. When you became state assemblyman, I wanted to call you assemblyman, you made me call Jeff. When you became senator, I want people to call me Jeff. I want to be part of the community. I want to make a difference. I want to provide the advocacy you're going to need, and I can win. This is a very, very difficult race for a Democrat to win. And I was the first senator to ever win my district. I was the first senator to ever get reelected. I was the first assemblyman to ever win the district and to get reelected. And overwhelming odds against me. But I worked, and I pushed, and I really tried to change and work for everybody that was around me. So a lot of times you hear a lot of talk, and that's good, and a lot of debate. But the bottom line is if you want to walk the walk, or if you want to talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. And I've walked the walk. This is a tough district. So we've had one Democrat before, and we've had Republican control for the longest time. We can change that, and we will.
We'll start with you, Mr. Vandrew. What is your position on net neutrality?
So net neutrality is actually an issue that I've done legislation on and was done in the state Senate. And what it essentially says is that the internet should be free for everyone, that the internet should not be controlled by large corporations, that the internet is this place where we can all talk, where we all can exchange ideas, and others that are powerful corporations are not going to control it. That was changed most recently in this administration. We fought it as much as we can at the state level. I was the sponsor of the legislation that actually said it's the wrong thing. The internet is yours. It's not some company's. And we're going to fight to keep it that way. And when we change Congress around, we're going to do legislation to hopefully bring it back to where it was before.
Well, I have to say that I agree with the senator. I didn't get in this race to run against Democrats. I got in this race to run against the Republicans. And I do believe that the internet should be free. So I agree wholeheartedly with what he said. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, so we talk about walking the walk and talking the talk. I was in Capitol Hill when net neutrality first became an issue in D.C. Senator Booker is on the Commerce Committee that actually deals with the Telecommunications Committee that deals with this specific issue. The Federal Communications Commission, they have 5 members. Ajit Pai is the chairman. Now that commission, the majority is determined by who's in the White House, and so we were safe when we had a Democrat in the White House. Ajit Pai was in the minority as a Republican in the FCC. Since Trump's come to the White House, this is a symptom of the problem that we're seeing in the White House. So let's be clear about sort of the origins of the issue, because all races matter. But you see this so often in the federal government. What you see is corporations, and you see not the Democrats, but you see the Republicans trying their darndest to privatize things and take things away from the average person. You're seeing it with the internet. They threaten Social Security. They threaten air and water. I mean, just the list goes on. This is another, just the pattern of behavior from the other side. And I'm happy to see that on this particular issue, all the Democrats up here agree.
Okay.
We'll start with you, Mr. Cunningham. In your first 100 days, if elected, what 3 issues would you like to tackle and why?
The issue of healthcare has been so pertinent to this country, and I've had a front row seat to some of the legislation that's been proposed by various people on the Hill. I helped write legislation to provide Medicare negotiation for this country. We have the world's best negotiator in the White House, but yet we don't negotiate Medicare prices. Because of this, Medicare currently costs about 73% more than Medicaid because they negotiate. Medicare currently pays about 80% more than the VA because they have the ability to negotiate. The Department of Health and Human Services literally has a clause that the Secretary cannot negotiate. This is nonsensical and has to change. Secondly, I also wrote and introduced a legislation with Mr. Cummings and Senator Bernie Sanders for drug importation. Now, when I talk about these issues, I was an investigator on the Hill. I saw firsthand when these laws don't pass, how families are impacted. The investigations I was conducting literally until I joined this race, because we need someone to amplify this fight. I've always rolled my sleeves up, and I'm willing to do it, particularly on this issue. And when I talk about investigations, briefly, I can tell you a little about those. But just 2 other things I've talked about. Healthcare is number 1. Number 2, education. It's critically important. I would not be sitting on this table as a viable congressional candidate if we did not have good public schools, and we need to make sure everyone has opportunities that I had, period. Number 3, jobs, vocational training, VOTEC training. There are jobs that are there, and we need to make sure people are trained for it. And I know the goal is always college. We have to meet people where they are. And where they are is needing a livable wage. My mom is still an hourly wage worker. I am the only one. People ask all the time, why did you join the race? Because I'm the only one that actually is kind of doing well in my family. I don't have to go look very far to see struggle. And I know when I talk about these issues in particular, I'm talking about doing right by people in my family, but also people in this community. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I would also have to agree that healthcare is the #1 issue for me as well. I have a lot of personal experience with healthcare. My husband passed away. I cared for my mom who passed away of Alzheimer's. I was the caretaker for her, as a matter of fact. I have a number of friends who have very serious health conditions, And I've watched how the cost of medical care continues to increase in this country. Something needs to be done about that, but I think most importantly that we need to have Medicare for all, a universal health care system in this country, because that is the only way that all Americans are going to be covered, and that is the only way to ensure that the pharmaceutical and the drug companies don't continue to make us pay exorbitant fees. I don't know if any of you have ever went to the emergency room and got a bill for $5,000 because the doctors that you saw were out of network. We have to have more transparency. Of course, education would be my second issue. I am an educator, 35 years. I would advocate for a very strong a more comprehensive STEM education program in our schools, starting down at the elementary level. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as vocational training, and of course, making sure that all of our children are college-bound or career-bound by the time they graduate. In addition to that, I would favor building our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges. We need better transportation system in this country so that people can get to jobs. The interesting thing that I see, particularly down here in South Jersey, is a lot of people don't have the transportation necessary to get to work, so we need to make sure to invest heavily in our mass transportation system. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's probably a few issues, obviously, many issues that we think that are important. To me, one overriding issue is getting more money back to the state of New Jersey. We export our money, so we don't get, for every dollar we put in to the federal government, we don't get a dollar back. We get far less. And that means less help for Atlantic City, less help for Atlantic County. It means less help for South Jersey. It means less help for the state of New Jersey. That's not fair. That would be number one issue, to try to change that, to work to change that so we got more money back. The money would be for things like education and public safety. You know, we can do more to make, I always think in Atlantic City, the promise again of the casinos, to make it lighter and brighter and better, and to increase economic opportunity so that people have the jobs they really deserve. And that promise wasn't kept. And we can do better. And the way that we can do better is by making sure that we get more back so we have the dollars to fund all the issues that are out there. You know, it was interesting to me when the Republicans were in, they kept saying they wanted to repeal Obamacare, repeal Obamacare, repeal Obamacare. How many times did we all hear that? A lot of times, right? But they didn't even have a plan to replace it. How can you do that? How about all the people that will lose health coverage? It's okay to have a different idea about health care, but if you're going to repeal something, you damn well better have something that you're going to replace it with and make it better. I voted to expand Medicaid in New Jersey so that more people would be covered. I voted for children's health care in New Jersey so that more children would be covered, because we had an option to go one way or the other, and I voted to do that, and we did do that. So we can do better. Never think that because you're one person or even a freshman legislator that you can't push your way through, that you can't stand up, make more noise, and make something happen, because you can.
Starting with Mr. Van Drew. In your platform, will it include providing permanent residency for those holding temporary protected status as a platform? Why or why not?
So this, and I want to talk about the whole issue a little bit, because it's about time that we had legislators that showed real leadership. Now we have a lot of folks over here that are classified as undocumented, millions, tens of millions. And they have lived here for many years. They have worked here for many years. The America has been their life for many years. And the notion that some folks have that we're going to send these people back on a boat or I don't even know how, millions upon millions of people, is nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. So we have to have a real process for people who love America and believe in America to become American citizens who are here. That's number one. And then secondly, we need a better work visa program. So for the people that do work with folks from other countries and have them come over here, that we have a system that really works and has been updated, because guess what? This one hasn't been for a very long time, and it needs to be done. And then the third part of that is, so now we've worked with all those folks that are here and the folks that are undocumented, and we've made them go through the process, learn about America, live America, and love America, and they do already. Anybody that is really criminal in nature, which is very few, but those that are, should be sent back. And then finally, I would say, we're not a nation of open borders, and we are a nation of the rule of law. So in the future, we need to make sure that our borders are solid and that we are safe. That doesn't mean we have to build a giant brick wall, by the way.
No, we certainly do not have to build the wall. That money that the Trump administration wants for building a wall, we could put that money elsewhere. We could put it into healthcare, we could put that money into education, and we could put that money into housing for the poor. Now, in terms of immigration, we need to see exactly who we have in this country, and what we need to do is we need to give them a clear path to citizenship. We do not need to continue to come up with legislation and tack these things onto some other bill. Get a clear path to citizenship for these people. In addition, I think we also need to look at ICE. We need to look at how it's being funded, and we need to make sure that the role that what role that they're playing, and make sure that they are in fact doing what they are supposed to be doing, because my research has shown that there are a lot of people who are very dissatisfied with ICE. So I think we really need to start seeing where our funds are going, and we need to have a clear path to citizenship for the people in this country.
Well, I want to start off by saying we absolutely do not build a wall. What you do build is compassion and respect and empathy and understanding. Things that we see are severely lacking in this country currently. This is another situation in which when I don't just espouse these views, which we should be better people and kinder people. I live it, I practice it. And what I mean by that is, there was a family in Vineland. They came here legally during Obama's tenure. And they faced deportation right before Christmas, right in December, because of Trump's policies. And I realized I did the research, found out where they were living in the Church of the Advocate, a sanctuary city in Philadelphia by Temple University. I called the caseworker up. I asked him, can I come speak with this family? And I also asked them, what's your favorite Mexican restaurant in Vineland? Because Vineland has a ton of good Mexican food. And then I brought them some, and I went and talked to those folks. I am passionate about doing the right thing for communities, vulnerable populations, and that's been a thread of my entire career. It's been shorter than the two up here, but that's what I'm about. When we talk about building our path to citizenship, people who only know this country, this is their country. They are Americans, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, and it's time that we make it real.
Mr. Cunningham, we'll start with you again. What is your position on the Citizens United decision with regard to campaign financing?
If this experience has taught me anything, it has taught me that our campaign finance system is quite possibly the most classist system in the country. If you're not born with a silver spoon in your mouth, it is damn near impossible to do what me and Tansy are doing right now. I'll say that. It's unfortunate that a lot of time has to be spent dollar for dollars, and then you become beholden to donors. But that's currently the system, and that's the behavior that's incentivized by the current system. It just is, unless we do something about it. I have already taken the American Promise Pledge to not take corporate PAC money, and also to make sure we overturn Citizens United. It's 8 years, we've seen the destruction of our government and our policies, and quite honestly, it's the reason that The NRA is in the pocket of politicians like the one on the stage.
I have to agree with Will. The Supreme Court decision that Citizens United is the worst thing that could ever have been done. But let me tell you something. I have a friend in North Carolina. Her name is Linda Coleman. She just ran the other night in the primary. She ran against a millionaire. He had $1 million of his own money that he put into that campaign. And I'll tell you what, Linda Coleman won by 56% of the vote. So and she won with just a little over $100,000. So let me tell you something. Money might be important, but money is not everything. When you have the support of the people, you have it all. So in spite of this system that we have in place that is rigged, it's rigged in favor of the wealthy and those of us who have very wealthy friends, which I'm not one of those. Most of the people I know are working and middle-class families. But I'll tell you what, those working and middle-class families have supported my campaign. I was the first one in this race back in the summer of 2017. And it's the support of people like you that have kept this race going. So money isn't everything.
So let's understand what Citizens United says. It says that corporations are the same as people, that they can give money, and that you can't even really track the money properly. Question, who was the first person in the state Senate to sponsor legislation, and it's the most we can do in the state Senate, to say that that should be overturned, even if it has to be done constitutionally? Anybody know the answer? It was me. I did it from the very get-go, and that went through the Senate. Secondly, you know, there's maybe a perception that, you know, my friends to the left of me here are trying to put out. Let me tell you, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth either. I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey. I think most folks know where that is. And I don't usually share this with people that much, and I almost never do. My parents struggled growing up, and in fact, I can remember a couple winters where we didn't have a refrigerator, and our food was kept on the back porch. That's a true story. I worked my way through school. I was on tag grants, and I became a dentist. And I'm a dentist in Pleasantville. But I've always worked hard, and I never had any silver spoon. And yes, the system is really skewed. You shouldn't depend upon money so much. It should be fighting for real values. And let me tell you one more thing. When nobody thought I could win, remember, literally, my political career has been in this very, very strong Republican bastion where I was outspent very often in the beginning, and nobody thought I'd ever be a freeholder, or I'd ever be a mayor, or I'd ever be a councilman. But I worked hard, and I went door to door, and I talked to people, and I listened. I listened to people. That's why God gives you 2 ears and 1 mouth, because you listen twice as much as you talk. And I found out what their needs are, and what their ideas are, and what they believed. And I worked for them, and I stood up for them, and I cared about them. And that's why I'm here today.
Starting with you, Mr. Van Drew, what is your position on gun control?
It's a good question. So what is my position on gun control? So we're going to start from the very beginning. Everybody, not everybody, but some folks, mostly my opponents, actually want to say that I've received tremendous amounts of money from the NRA, and I'm just, you know, an NRA pawn that's here. About 10 years ago, I received $1,000, and I gave it to charity. So that's how much money I received from the NRA, and that's a fact, and it can be checked. Secondly, my position on gun control is that we can do better. Common sense gun control. I'm a Second Amendment person. I believe in the right of people to own guns. I do. I believe they have that right. But it's responsible, and it's common sense. What does that mean? Universal background checks everywhere, at every gun store, every gun shop, every gun show, every time somebody buys, purchases, or gets a gun, they must have a universal background check, period, in every state, throughout the United States of America. That is the first piece of legislation that we have to pass. That's important because if people who have guns have been universally background checked, we obviously are going to be safer. Secondly, what we do in New Jersey and we should do nationally is that we have an actual system where somebody is dangerous. They are a very, very aggressive or violent person with severe psychiatric problems. That's immediately reported to NAACP, which is the agency that does that, and the federal authorities get that information so they can do something. That should be universally done throughout the United States of America. Thirdly, we have to make sure as we go through this entire process that we do the right thing. And this is a question that really requires more time, but I don't have it. But the point is that we can have common sense, that we can have gun control, and we can have Second Amendment rights.
And I'd just like to say that past behavior is the most reliable of future behavior. And Senator, with all due respect, I'm not so sure that you got it accurate on your gun policy. You voted against reducing maximum capacity of magazines. You also voted against handgun limitation purchases. You have an A+ rating from the NRA, and in 2007 and 2008 you received money from gun manufacturers. So let's check the records. And again, if present behavior is very indicative of future behavior. Now, in terms of guns, my family has been personally affected by gun violence. It's always been important to me ever since the 1970s when they started flooding the communities, African American communities in particular, with guns and drugs. In addition, I would like to say that not only do I favor background checks, I also favor bans on assault weapons. They have no place in our society. We also need to raise the age for purchase of weapons to 21 years old. In addition, we need to see to it that criminals, as well as those who are involved in domestic violence, in addition to hate crimes, that they do not have access to weapons. So not only do we need to stop the gun violence, we need to do something about the 310 million guns that are in circulation in this country. Something needs to be done. And it certainly doesn't mean arming teachers with guns, which I oppose. Thank you.
You can do that immediately after? Senator Bencher?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to straighten the record out about something because I didn't get a chance to finish it. To say that I'm not telling the record properly, I don't believe is accurate. I've never said that I'm not a Second Amendment person. I've never said I think people's guns should be taken away. But what I did say, and I didn't get a chance to finish, is that was 10 years ago, number one. I didn't take any money from the NRA in this election, the last election, the election before that, or the election before that, for years, number one. Secondly, real quickly, I think it's important, what happened at the school shows how we have to put more money into things like ATF, because think what happened. The FBI was informed that there was a real problem here with this man, and it fell through the cracks. And then after the FBI let it fall through the cracks, the police had visited his home 50+ times, and yet nothing was done. The school complained that they were so afraid of him, they were afraid and didn't allow him to bring in a backpack because they thought he might have a pipe bomb, or they thought they might have a gun. So the bottom line is that there needs to be more coordination and communication. And by the way, all over his internet was he was going to kill everybody and himself. There was no reason that should have happened. Those guns should have been taken away.
I'll take this. So I think
Hold on one second. I'm sorry, I apologize. Let's make clarification. Because the young lady just came and asked a question. Our rules are that anytime you are attacked or with a statement from one candidate to the other, that candidate that was attacked has 1 minute for rebuttal. Okay? So that's the rules, so that everybody understands, so nobody thinks somebody was unfair. Mr. Cunningham, I apologize, but you will have your full time.
Thank you. I do find it interesting that Senator Van Drew is touting he only took $1,000. You take $1,000 and you vote with the NRA every step of the way, that makes you a cheap date. Now, let's talk about more statistics, because 77% of guns that were confiscated in the U.S., in New Jersey, the first 3 months of this year, were purchased out of state. So when we talk about how federal law impacts our state and our security, that's how it impacts it. I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment, but I'm also a firm believer in the words well-regulated. That means we have the constitutional authority to actually impose regulations. It was never a run-rampant amendment to the Constitution. What I will not accept, and I think what we see on the other side, is hysteria. If we want to talk about substantive reform in the gun debate, and no one's bringing up the fact that someone's going to go into your house and take your guns, it's a distraction that have that kind of hysteria in a debate where we vitally need real answers or real solutions. And the American public stands with a huge majority on so many issues. 94% universal background checks, 92% want to ban people who are mentally ill from purchasing guns, 85% want to ban convicted stalkers, 82% want to ban bump stocks, 71% want to ban assault rifles and reinstate that ban. That ban existed in the 90s for a reason, folks. Assault rifles are used in 36% of all gun-related incidents, and 144% more injuries occur when they're used, and 46% more deaths. This is such a crucial issue, and we've seen so many young folks stand up and raise their voices and come into their own because this matters so much, and we cannot let it fade into the background. We have to keep at it, and one of the ways we keep at it is also overturning the Dickey Amendment. In 1996, there was an amendment added to a budget bill that forbade the Center for Disease Control for doing gun research. If you want to prevent gun violence, you actually need to fund the research to do that.
See, these guys keep attacking me, so I keep getting another chance to go again. I'm sorry, but it's the rules of the whole thing. Will, number one, just so you know, I'm not a cheap date. Secondly, I've made it clear I think assault weapons should be banned nationally. I never voted for assault weapons. I've never agreed that we should. We don't have them in New Jersey. They were already banned in New Jersey. Thirdly, bump stocks were mentioned as well. I voted against bump stocks. I haven't always voted with the NRA on every single issue. Again, I've always said, I am a Second Amendment guy. I am a gun owner. I have a couple of pistols. I go target practicing once in a while. That does not mean that I do everything that a group says that you should do. So I hope I'm clear about that. I hope I'm clear about the assault weapons. I certainly was clear that I'm not a cheap date.
Just as a point of clarification, if any candidate is referenced by another candidate, they do have an opportunity to rebut them. So just reframing, it's not an attack, it's just a reference. Moving forward, we will start with Mr. Van Drew again. No, excuse me, Mr. Cunningham. Are you in favor of funding Planned Parenthood? Why or why not?
For me, this is a no-brainer. Planned Parenthood they do great work, they do excellent work, making sure communities, there is some nonsense being spewed earlier. I'm not sure if you guys were in the room when you heard Mr. Singh going off about whatever he was preaching about. The Planned Parenthood I know provides contraception and cancer detection, and they do amazing work for communities that vitally need it. too many times we see the other side attack really well-intended programs because I think there's a strain in this country if a program doesn't benefit you, therefore it's not valuable. We need to be looking out for other communities, many of whom don't always have a lot in common with ourselves. In this particular case, people across the aisle on both sides of the spectrum need to be standing up for an agency that is receiving funding that's doing great work because it's valuable.
When I got in this race, I always said, I'm not going to tell no lies and make no promises that I can't keep. And if you check the record, when I say something, there's no flip-flop, and I don't say one thing and turn back and say something another time. I've said from the beginning, I've always said it, I am a pro-choice woman. I believe in women's reproductive health, and I'm tired of watching men decide to legislate our bodies. Enough of that. Planned Parenthood, I believe that it should be funded, and I will do anything in my power to stop anyone who tries to defund Planned Parenthood in any way. Thank you very much.
So it's interesting because I've actually had the chance to vote. As you know, it's a match between what happens at the federal government and at the state government for this agency. And we've had it in the past, and then Governor Christie didn't want to have those clinics anymore, and he took them, he redlined them out of the budget. So we put it back in the budget, and he redlined it again. To make a long story short, I have voted 16 times for those agencies to be able to survive in the state of New Jersey. And sometimes I was voting to override his veto, and sometimes I was just voting for the agency itself. But in either case, I am a supporter. I've always been, and I've got the voting record to prove it. 16 times is a whole lot of times. And it comes down to this, however we feel about the issue, and it's a very personal issue. It's about life, it's about children, it's about women's bodies. It is the decision of the woman to make what she does with her body is her personal decision at the end of the day, and no one else's.
Our audience members were gracious to point out that Ms. Youngblood did not have an opportunity to start a question, so the next one will go to you. Okay. The next question will be, what is your opinion about civility, or the lack thereof, among our elected officials in Washington?
I cannot believe what I see that's going on in Washington, D.C. I have never witnessed anything like it. We elect people in leadership roles. They are to be models of good behavior. We should hold our teachers, our preachers, and our elected officials to a higher standard.
Right.
And why? Because they represent us. That we should not name call. We should not be bullying on the internet. We should not be talking about people. And that's the thing that most amazes me, how a president could just get on TV and name call and bash people. That needs to stop. I think that we should model what we teach our children. And I used to always teach children that they should always be, my mother used to always say to me, if you can't say something nice, then don't say anything. So that's the way I feel about civility, and it's very important. And I think our president needs a lesson in how to be civil.
Mr. Cunningham.
I agree with everything Ms. Youngblood just said. I think it was shocking, and I think we all remember back to that day after November 6th or November 7th, 2016, because you just saw this behavior being modeled by candidate Trump, and that led you to believe that he would never be our president, because our president always is a model citizen, someone you can look up to, someone you can trust to behave in a civilized manner. I think what's most vitally important is the ability to be able to reach across the aisle and talk to folks who are different than yourself, and I've been doing that my entire career. I don't tell you this to brag. I graduated as class president at the University of Texas School of Law. It was one of the most conservative, it's one of the top law schools in the country, but it's the most conservative. You don't get elected by your peers at a school like that unless you actually know how to talk to Republicans, and not just talk to them, become friends with them, understand them, meet their families. I have Republican friends who text me all the time asking I'm doing this race because they want me to win. They know when it comes to talk about these issues and bringing civil and bringing folks to the table and building trust across the aisle, they know I'm real deal when it comes to that. Not only that, but I did it on Capitol Hill already. 4 results for Senator Booker and Congressman Cummings. That's the kind of behavior I demonstrate daily in my personal life. I believe that you have to, it's gonna sound cliche, you gotta be the change you wanna see in the world. And no matter how filthy the language or behavior we see demonstrated in the White House, we can demonstrate better by doing better.
That's right.
Mr. Bandrew.
So, I agree, of course. I think everybody does. But again, it's one of those situations where if you want to talk the talk, you do have to walk the walk, and you have to be an example. And you will notice that whether it's tonight or throughout the entire campaign, I have tried to conduct myself in a way that, you know, my children and my grandchildren and my friends and my neighbors can be proud of me and proud of what you represent. Doesn't mean you can't disagree, but particularly because of the internet and because of what's happening now, there are so many mean-spirited things that are said that just aren't necessary and aren't productive. Now, I'm from one of the most Republican districts, literally in the state of New Jersey. Might be the second most Republican district. There's many a year where I've gotten more bills passed than any other legislator in the state. And that's because I've worked with people. I don't always agree with them, but you've got to work with them. We have a responsibility in this nation as people to move forward, to change the dynamic, to be a place where your friends or your children can look at whomever is the senator or whomever is the congressperson and say, I'm proud of him or her. I'm proud of what she or he has done or what they represent. I'm proud of the way they conduct themselves. That's in the spirit of what this nation was about. Doesn't mean we always agree, but it means we can be proud and we can stand tall and we can behave with decorum and decency and gentility and honor. That's what America's about. And we've regressed in some ways. Not only it comes from the top, but it's come all the way down. And we can all do much, much better than that. And I think that we will. And that's part of the change that I want to try to help make.
We've come to the point of final summations from all of our candidates. We'll start with Mr. Cunningham, but I will ask, because we are among Atlantic City, please in your summation address what you'd like for Atlantic City moving forward as an elected official.
First, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. The fact that there's so many people here really just demonstrates how important and vitally crucial this race is. You deserve a representative as resilient, passionate, and strong-willed as you all are. And that's what I'm bringing to the table. I've already gone from being homeless to the house. You don't do that unless you're willing to roll your sleeves up and get results. And the same results I have gotten for myself, I want to do for your families and your friends and your children and for you. I'm in this for the right reasons, folks. And I'm not going anywhere. Atlantic City in particular has been devastated economically. My stepdad actually is a security guard and hourly wage worker at Bally's. So when we talk about casino closures, there were years where my mom was also an hourly wage worker. There was economic insecurity. Yeah, I was on a pristine Ivy League campus and I was in law school and I heard the stories, I know the stories. My family still lives these stories. One of the things that has to be a priority, we have to learn from our mistakes. In 2015, when Rebel Casino closed, the Department of Labor kicked in $30 million for job training to this area. I would like to personally see a study conducted in which we actually determine what happened with that money. I'm not saying anything bad happened. I hope something good happened. But we need to be better with our funding. We need to be replicating things that are successful, that have results. As an investigator, that's what I was all about. I looked on Capitol Hill, I looked at the fact sheets in front of me, and I deduced what should happen or what was happening, and we made a plan forward. In this particular instance, we need to figure out how best to get people where they need to be, whether it's job training, vocational training, certification programs. That's what it's all about. And that's not just Atlantic City, that's all of South Jersey, because Cumberland, I'm from the poorest county in the state. But Atlantic City and the residents aren't very far behind. Our struggles are the same, and in me, you have a fighter who won't quit. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to end by saying that I have a tremendous amount of respect for Will. He's a young, educated, ambitious young man, and I do respect him. I also have respect for the senator here, and I would just like to say that, as I had to stop earlier, with that being said, I represent the backbone of the Democratic Party. I am the strongest, most qualified, and most electable candidate in this race, and everybody knows it. I am the only candidate with the energy and the passion to mobilize the voters, all of the voters. Time and magazine, Newsweek, they know it. The Black Congressional Caucus in D.C., they know it. That's why they have endorsed my campaign for Congress. But most importantly, it is the people of South Jersey who know it. That is why we are here today. Because we're fired up, and many of my supporters are in red out there in the audience today. We are fired up and we are ready to take back control of the House of Representatives. My message is simple and it is universal. It is about economic, educational, health, political, and social equality, fairness, and justice. We cannot afford to lose the November election to the Republicans. We need to send someone we can trust who espouses a true democratic system of government and who will apply the law equally without preference to any race, religion, place of origin, or gender. Again, I'm going to ask all of you to vote for me June 5th, because you know in your hearts and in your head that I'm the right candidate for this job. Thank you. We used to have a saying about Atlantic City. Atlantic City, baby, I spend my summers down here, so I just have a passion for this place. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. Whether you support me or don't, you're part of the process, and that's a good thing. I guess I want to go back to where I was speaking before, and that's about pathway to victory. So real quickly, it's so important to realize Tansy's right. You got to be able to win. You can't change anything if you can't win. And if there's anything that I've shown over the years is that I'm a hard worker and that I've won elections. I've won elections in almost impossible circumstances. The reason that this congressional district is almost always Republican controlled, other than Congressman Hughes, he won during Watergate, is because of the first legislative district. That's where I come from, because of Cape May County and parts of Cumberland County, and that area tend to always vote Republican. But it's different with me, because I'm their senator. So they're going to vote for me. Even if they cross party lines, many of them are going to vote for me. And I'm going to work so hard, so darn hard, in the rest of the district, and I have already, to work with everybody to make sure that we win. And when we win, then we can change leadership. When we win, we can present new ideas. When we win, we can bring more money back to Atlantic City. When we win, we can hopefully help to get public safety grants for Atlantic City. When we win, we can hopefully make more economic development for Atlantic City. When we win, we hopefully can help improve with education and educational opportunity. When we win, we can make it a city of not only casinos, but of eds and meds and so much more. We were with some people today that even spoke about bringing the fishing industry back in Atlantic City. Some of the best fishing in the whole state of New Jersey and the country is in Atlantic City. It needs to be more diversified. There's so much more that we can do. And when we win, hopefully we can finally get people the opportunity and the jobs they deserve at the rate they deserve.
On behalf of the NAACP of Atlantic City, we'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. Please mark your calendars for Tuesday, June 5th, where all these candidates, both Republican and Democrats, will be up for their primary elections. Please exercise your vote because the ballot is our voice here in Atlantic City. So please, vote.
Thank you so much. Before we leave, real quick, can we give Ms. Smartfield a hand, because she did an excellent job. Excellent. One other thing before we leave. Our president, as I said earlier, was at a graduation up in Rutgers for his grandson, and he came in a little bit late with an excellent excuse. So we just want to acknowledge our president, Mr. Shabazz. Okay, and anyway, let's thank the candidates once again for coming. Thank you, sir. Thank you, man. Thank you, sir. And again, we'll see you in November for the election. Thank you once again. And by the way, I got several texts that it's coming over good on the radio, because it was live on the radio. Thank you.